Welcome into the booth here. The Colorado Buffaloes about to take on the Delaware Blue Hens in the second game of the season. Gentlemen, how excited are we for this game?
Oh man, well let me tell you, Liam, this is a very exciting one indeed. This is, we're going to talk about this in a second, I know, but I mean, this is Delaware's first matchup as an FBS team against an FBS opponent, and they decided to start off in style, coming out here to Boulder, Colorado, into the Big 12, 5,300 feet above sea level. And speaking of that, Colorado is coming out of the locker room right now for their second round of warm-ups. Very exciting day here at Folsom.
And on the other side of things, CU, this is their rebound game. And I'm excited to see how they are able to rebound. This is going to determine, it could determine how the rest of the season goes if they're really able to show a dominant performance here against a smaller school like Delaware after losing week 1.
And coming up on an uphill climb for Delaware, they're going to be facing, again, like we said, their first FBS on FBS matchup after transitioning through. It'll be really interesting to see how they approach a bigger stage against us here at Colorado.
Yeah, this is going to be a very important game for the Buffaloes and for Delaware as well. As you mentioned, a very historic matchup for them, their first matchup against an FBS team as an FBS team. What does this history-making game mean for the Blue Hens and their program as a whole?
Well, this is, this season, this game even is the beginning of a new chapter in the history of Delaware football. Of course, that's kind of obvious, but this really could kind of determine how the Blue Hens really embrace their new role as an FBS school. If they put up a decent performance against CU, a lot of eyes are going to be turned on to them. Recruits who can't get into power schools. Just a lot of people, this is a big opportunity for Delaware to really be noticed as the newcomer to FBS.
Yeah, and you see them, they go from a position in the FCS where they were consistently contending for championships there to now they're kind of slotted into the bottom rung here in the FBS. So it is a chance for them to establish themselves even from that bottom position and start to climb.
Yeah, I think you fellas put this perfectly. This is a very exciting day for Delaware coming out here to Boulder. This is the biggest stage that they're probably going to be playing on all season. But should they come away with a W today, this like you all said, this could be a big recruiting opportunity for them going to those schools in the Northeast who maybe don't have as prominent football programs as those in the Midwest or the South or out west here in Colorado, but they'll be able to elevate their status and as a contender in the FBS.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and this is also a nationally televised game being broadcast on Fox, not an opportunity they see very often, so great way to get their names out there and to appeal their brand to recruits and to investors and to their alumni to grow this program in the future. Is this the right time, though, to make that jump? We've seen this struggle a lot with teams in recent years, going from the FCS to the FBS, like UMass is one that I think of. Great team at the FCS level. They come up to the FBS, and they've been one of the worst teams perennially for a number of years now. We've seen it with teams like Kennesaw State, who made the jump at a time where they weren't really competing in the FCS, and now they're certainly not competing at the FBS level. Is this the right time for Delaware to make that jump?
Well, I think so, and you have to think making the jump from FCS to FBS isn't always about performance. If it was, we would have saw North Dakota and South Dakota states. They would have been up here at the FBS level forever ago. And so it's really not just about that, and especially when you consider the other team that just made the jump to FBS, Missouri State. They were even worse last year and in recent years in general than Delaware, and yet both teams made the jump this year. So it's not really about performance, what they've done recently, which they weren't a bad team last year in FCS, and they just dominated an FCS school in Delaware State last week. But they felt like they're able to really handle the opportunity, handle really the increased, everything that comes with moving up to a bigger level.
And on top of that, and along with what you said about it being more than just a performance thing, economically too for Delaware, this seems like the right time for them to make the jump. There's only so much of a market in the FCS for them, and with the NCAA making it harder for teams from the FCS to transition with recent rule changes, whether or not they're ready now has to be the right time for them.
Absolutely. I really like that point that you said here, John. so many things have changed in the last couple of years since I was a freshman here at CU 2 years ago. And I mean, NIL has really reshaped the way the NCAA operates. So, I mean, a school like Delaware, they've always been, I grew up in the Northeast, so half of my high school actually went to Delaware. It's kind of crazy, even though I'm from New York. But I mean, that's like, elevating their program up to this status, this FBS status rather, is just incredible. I mean, the fan base is just, they absolutely love it. And they've shown just by last week, smashing in-state rival Delaware State, former FCS opponent, they've shown that they can really compete at this level. So I'm really excited to see what they can do here today and going forward the rest of the season, fellas.
Yeah, it'll be very important for them to have a good first year here. We've seen a lot of programs that have gone up to the FBS. Another team I think of is Idaho. When they made their transition briefly to the FBS, their performance on the field was poor, and it ultimately ended up being a bad thing for their program. So while we're in a day and age of college football where to make good money as a college football program, being at the FBS level is a must, unless you're, like a North Dakota State or so of the FCS. But we've also seen that if it goes the wrong way, it can tank your program, and it can really cause a lot of lost time. But additionally for them, will this be a successful jump? This is the right time financially, I think. But will it be a successful jump, and will we see them start to, have a jump like we saw with like James Madison or these other teams that have come up recently, been successful right away, and now have established themselves as a legitimate FBS program?
Well, I think JMU they're like an outlier, because they came up and they just did amazing, right? And I don't think Delaware doesn't have to do amazing. They just have to compete. They just have to compete in their conference games, which I think, based on who they have, their team on paper, I think they can. Based on their performance last week, their performance last year, they are not going to be getting blown out in conference games. They're going to be just fine. They're in a good position to just slowly get better every year.
Absolutely, I agree with you there, Colby. I mean, Conference USA it's a Group 5 conference. It's often overlooked. I mean, they've got some really competitive teams there, especially since in the last couple of years with conference realignment, we've seen so many teams like Jacksonville State just go to that conference. And I mean, it's very expansive. It goes all the way from the Northeast down to New Mexico State. So I mean, it's rather interesting. But I mean, they're playing with opponents that are more on their level, and they can compete with. I mean, Colorado. This is like I've said before. This is probably the biggest game that they'll have all season, the biggest spotlight. So if they can shine here, that'd be amazing. But overall, I think their success is going to be really amazing this season. But John, what do you think?
I mean, on top of what you guys said, it's baby steps for them. They come in as a new established program in the FBS, and they just have to, whether it's in this game or in future games within their conference, build that momentum more than anything else. If they build that momentum going into a future offseason and future recruitment season, they can start to make the program more fleshed out.
And speaking of momentum, it is one of the most important things as you approach conference play, and it's really hard to get that going when you start off with a loss early in the season in non-conference play, and that's exactly what happened with Colorado last week against Georgia Tech. Rebounding from that game is going to be important, incredibly important here in this game and then for the rest of their season. Mentally, regrouping from a loss like that, what should we expect this team to do if they are going to rebound? What does Colorado need to do mentally to regroup and be back on track for this game?
Yeah, of course. Well, first things first, your season doesn't end in week one, especially for Colorado here. It doesn't end in week one. They still have, so much more of the season. And secondly, that's why you want to have like a smaller school like Delaware scheduled after a big week one. This is exactly the right time to play them. And then they have Houston and Wyoming after. Houston, we're not going to talk about them yet, but good people overall to face after such a tough week one opponent. They just have to really take it week by week. They can't let the week one loss linger in their heads. They got to move on, and if so, they'll be fine. They can embrace the rest of the season.
As much as this is a get-right game, they have to be more decisive. That's what Coach Sanders has been emphasizing the last week and a half. They're defensive. It lacks the decisiveness and the explosiveness that they were expecting. The physicality, this game, like you said, Colby, it's a get-right game for them defensively, and a good chance for them to show off that physicality.
Absolutely. I mean, coming on, this was honestly, from what we've seen, especially in the 2024 season with scheduling. I mean, this was a huge week 1 for Colorado coming up against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They're a huge team in the ACC, and I mean, they've had some massive upsets over the last couple of years, especially with that Florida State upset. So, I mean, coming in here, I mean, and absolutely obliterated, or not, I don't want to say obliterated. That was a very close game, but it was tough. I mean, Hens King posed a huge threat. I'm going to touch on him again in a minute. But, I mean, having those smaller games here and there, like Delaware, Wyoming coming up in a couple weeks, that really just helps to balance you out. But, I mean, North Dakota State, if I may touch on that last year, that was like they're one of the toughest FCS opponents, and a lot of teams like in the Power Four last year faced a small school with an FCS team and absolutely blew them out. And they gave us a run for our money last year. So these past couple of years, we've had some very, very tough week 1s. It's unfortunate that we lost last week, but hopefully Delaware, this team coming in here, it's a smaller school. This will be a much welcomed, I guess, revenge for what happened in week 1 and finally get us back on track as a program here at Colorado.
Yeah, it's going to need to be a quick mental turnaround, a very week-by-week sort of mentality. Can't linger on the same mistakes that were made last week, and you're going to need to learn from them rather than dwelling on them. And when you are posed to similar situations, worrying about, oh no, we could potentially fall into the same issues that we had last time. Using this game as a confidence booster is going to be important. And in terms of bouncing back from that Georgia Tech game, you're now facing a much weaker opponent. This isn't a team, like you said, that is a top contender in a Power 4 conference. Can they use this? How can they use this game as a launching pad, and not only to rebound from last week, but then to propel them forward and hopefully get the momentum they were trying to start last week?
Well, every school has what I like to call tuning games, where they usually in week 1, but really just before conference play starts, they schedule smaller schools to kind of just tweak things, make sure their fundamentals, look at their game plans, things like that. Games that should be must win, or should be wins. And so here, what CU needs to do is they just need to really kind of revise things that went wrong last week. They need to keep working on the run game. They need to kind of settle into a pass game. They need to work on the pass rush, things like that, work on the run defense, just kind of improving upon things that need to be improved upon. And hopefully that will turn into, for them, that will turn into a solid win. You don't want a sloppy win against Delaware. You want a solid win, multiple scores. You want to look good. You want to improve it.
We're on the national stage here, fellas, and Colby, to your point about improving. I mean, Liam, we saw last week that Coach Prime in his post-game presser, he didn't really seem too keen on addressing his mistakes right then and there. So what I really hope is that he and his staff and his team have taken the time over the course of this week to learn from those mistakes and just come up with solutions that will help them dominate here against this lower level opponent such as Delaware. So looks like they're warming up down there now. They're looking pretty good. So we'll see if Pat Sherman, Robert Livingston and company have convened with Coach Prime to really come up with strategies to address the horrendous issues from last week.
All it's about is comfortability and execution. Last week we saw a lot of the issues came from a lack of execution, whether it be clock management issues, dropped passes, stuff like that. So this game, because we are such favorites, the comfortability is what will allow us to practice those mistakes, get that execution through, and build, again, like you've been saying, on those issues.
Yeah, and one of the major issues last week was the defense. We, of course, let up almost 500. It was pushing 500 yards of total offense against Georgia Tech. It was a grueling and just tiresome battle against our defense, and it wore them down rapidly. How important are the defensive adjustments, the defensive communication, and then, of course, just adjusting to what they're seeing on the offense, because it didn't seem like they did that very well against Georgia Tech. How important will that be this week?
Oh, it's going to be super, super important, Liam. I cannot emphasize that enough. I mean, they just, like you've touched on this before, I mean, they just did not adjust last game. I mean, Robert Livingston just and his staff they could not read the plays that were being drawn up. And I mean, Hens King, he was a huge threat. He's one of those QBs who just is extraordinary with running the ball. He takes it himself. I mean, well, I'll get to more of his stats in a little bit, but I mean, today you just got to be more analytical. You just cannot, and with this team coming in, it's just Delaware, can't just let that get away from you, fellas.
Well, and the whole defense just needs to be able to recognize plays a little quicker. Most every run that Georgia Tech runs, and that they will run for this whole season because this is how they work, is you will not know who has the ball between Hens King or one of their few running backs. And you really saw that problem last week with CU. A lot of times, a lot of players running after the wrong dude. They'd be running after the running back while Hens King himself had it, or vice versa. Of course, you can't completely stop that. They do that as good as anybody. But you just have to be able to recognize plays, who has the ball a little bit quicker. And hopefully for the team, that's something they worked on in practice this week.
Yeah, something that Delaware offers here, which is a great chance for them to adjust their defense, is that their now quarterback Nick Minicucci stepping in for the injured starter from Delaware. He's another dual threat quarterback. He can use those legs. So their ability to plug those gaps, stop the run, is going to come in huge for this game.
Yeah, it's going to be very important. And looking a little closer at containing the quarterback run, of course, you mentioned that Hens King was the #1 threat for Georgia Tech last week, and he ran all over our defense, and there were no real adjustments made. He had his way with the defense, and now we look at another quarterback in Nick Minicucci, who, while there is not a lot of designed runs drawn up for him, he can do. He's very good at capitalizing on open space, recognizing gaps in the defense, and then attacking those gaps and making the defenses pay. What is going to be the key to adjust from last week, and what caused so many issues last week that we are going to need to change this week?
Well, I mean, look at last week, look at the stat sheet, 0 sacks, right? You cannot have 0 sacks against another team. You need to get to the quarterback a little more efficiently, and because of how Georgia Tech runs their offense, so many runs, play actions, all of that, they didn't really have a chance to get to the QB. Today, they need to get to him. They need to get to Delaware's QB to really kind of prevent. Like, the best way to prevent the scrambling, the moving around, is to just get to him quick. CU needs to have a really good game here, 3 or 4 sacks at least.
The biggest thing to emphasize on the defense will be speed. Overwhelming Delaware with our speed defensively will be the key to getting to the quarterback and stopping him from getting away on those scramble situations. That has to be the key to them overwhelming the offensive line of Delaware here.
Let me just bring in some stats from Hens King last week. I mean, just rushing yards. He had 156 rushing yards, and his longest rush was 45, and on top of that, 143 passing yards, longest pass 27, and he had 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that is just something that we don't see very often from a quarterback. He's 1 in a million, really coming in here. So, I mean, Delaware, their QB is like, I mean, he's similar. He's dual threat, just like Caden Salter, but obviously he's nothing like Hens King. So, I mean, I really hope that Colorado, like I said earlier, has learned from their mistakes from last week and really can put those actions into play, analyzing plays that Georgia Tech was calling, because Delaware may have similar plays called here today.
Yeah, and Delaware is a team that it's interesting because you get another team that functions pretty similarly to Georgia Tech. They obviously don't have quite the two-headed monster at the running back position that we were working with against Georgia Tech. But yeah, we mentioned the very mobile quarterback. But yeah, it's going to be key for the defense to plug those gaps and to prevent that open space that Hens King was capitalizing on, and then Nick Minicucci capitalized on last week against Delaware State. What position group in specific is going to need to step up to prevent that?
I mean, just the D-line, just everybody in the trenches. Get to the QB, get some sacks. Last year, we led the Big 12. CU led the Big 12 in sacks. After week 1, 0 sacks, as I already said. So they're going to have more of a chance to get to the QB this week. And so as long as they do that, things will be a lot better.
Absolutely, fellas. This is not the same team as last year. I mean, we had a lot of vets go into the show, obviously, but I mean, coming in here today, I mean, I really liked what you touched on, Colby. I mean, our defensive line. I mean, they're explosive. We saw it in the spring game, and I mean, the action that we saw there, that was just not present last week against Georgia Tech. And I mean, we saw. I mean, I'm going to go back to the spring game for a second because I mean they just kept penetrating. That pocket collapsed and they got to Juju multiple times. So we'll touch on him in a little bit too. But I would hope to see that same play action that we saw in the spring game come into play here, because we did not see it last week, and that was very, very disappointing.
Of course, jumping off of what you two say, the defensive line needs to step in and just get to the quarterback as soon as possible. But also, additionally, as those gaps open up, the linebackers need to keep going and plugging those vertical lanes. That's the biggest key to stopping those openings as they arrive.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there. The linebackers spoke this week on flying to the ball. They said it's a mentality. They said that that's something that they take pride in, and that's something that they are heavily focused on this week. They've been focused on it all week in practice. The discipline of this defense is very important, and the linebackers, I think, is where that starts. Martavius French, Reggie Hughes are going to be the guys who are going to need to step up. They had pretty good games last week, but we did see them giving up some space that the Georgia Tech runners were able to fill up and hurt our defense with. But flipping sides of the ball, let's talk about Colorado's offense. We're going to look at last week, and we'll talk about early in the game where they had 3 turnovers in the first quarter, only managed to get 7 points out of those 3 turnovers. You're, of course, going up against a team like Delaware. You're going to likely get either the same amount of opportunities or a lot more opportunities to score and to create points, to create big plays. How do you capitalize on those and not struggle with the same capitalization issues you had last week?
First and foremost, it's about creating sustained drives. A lot of 3-and-outs last week for the Buffs. You just got to get at least 1 first down, Saw last week that even if they got that first down, the drive as a whole was a lot more successful. Just figure out a way to get that first down, and things will go a lot more smoothly.
Yeah, those turnovers last week, they had so many opportunities to become explosive drives. I mean, the excitement in the stadium too was astronomical. And I mean, I was up here, Liam, we were up here on the call with Paxton Haynes, our broadcast partner, and that was just super exciting. We really wanted to see some action on those plays. We got on the first drive, we had Caden Salter for that incredible pass to score the first touchdown, get the first points on the board for Colorado. It was a great way to start out, but they just could not hold that energy, and after that I just felt like they collapsed. So I would really hope that should they get more turnovers, our defense is very well capable of doing that. We'll see some action and actually being able to capitalize and get back to the line to gain and get that first down, make it downfield, and dominate against these Delaware Blue Hens.
The key with Salter is, again, just comfortability. You can see after that first drive where we scored, he began to get nervous, he began to tighten up. He had a few pretty bad missed passes. And so the key is just to stay loose throughout the game, honestly. Keep him comfortable, don't put him in positions like that. And also for him to use his legs. That's a big part. He's a dual threat quarterback. There are a few times last game where he chose to throw in spots where he could have just carried the ball through. So making sure to utilize that dual threat from Caden is going to be a huge key to keep that offensive momentum going.
Yeah, and another huge part of those long sustained drives is the running backs. We have an embarrassment of riches at the running back position this season, something that Colorado hasn't seen in a while. But last week, it did feel like they had a hard time getting some sustainability and consistency out of them, because you'd get, like a Michael Welch who'd have averaged over 8 yards per carry in the first quarter. We don't see him for the rest of the second. We go into halftime. He's not playing much in the third. It's a little confusing. It's like, this is a guy who was playing really well. Why aren't we riding the hot hand? And then it seemed to sort of follow that theme through the rest of the game. How does Colorado identify who they need to go with at any given time, and how important is that to those sustained drives?
Well, it's very important because not every running back's the same. All the guys are different. Of course, Hayden is out, so won't see him out week 1, 2, so that's nothing new this year. However, and going back to sustained drives, if CU's going to run the ball first 2 times, they just need to do a better job at kind of meshing the run game and the play game. Week 1, it felt like they were trying to figure out the run game and figure out the passing game. They need to figure out how to combine the two. But going back to your actual question, hopefully over this last week and last week's game, the coaching staff was able to get a good view at what different running backs are good in different moments. And so just hopefully they have more of an idea of who they want to play. That's really not something I can talk about myself because I'm not there at the practices, you know. It's just who they like more, every running back's different abilities type thing.
Yeah, I mean, we have an explosive array of running backs, and I mean, Michael Welch, he saw so much playing time last week. I mean, but only 64 rush yards, and I mean, he's one of those guys. I mean, he's a dog, man. I mean, despite only being a sophomore, I mean, he's like coming in here, making these explosive plays, but he just wasn't given too many opportunities because I think there was a lot of miscommunication between our offensive line and Pat Shermer and quarterback Caden Salter. And I mean, you've got other folks as well who can serve as equal threats, but I mean, I think just having your one guy that you can rely upon is going to be essential going into these next couple weeks, especially today.
And going off that, I mean, again, it's just keeping that sustainability on the offensive line, too. This is the second straight offseason where we've seen the offensive line wizard up and remade again. So we'll see them have to walk in and then allow Michael Welch to get more of those runs, get more of those big plays. This Colorado team is kind of unique compared to previous years because we are going to be a lot more run-centric than we were in the past.
Yeah, and getting those guys going is going to be incredibly important, and figuring out just who your guy is. This is obviously not a team that is focused on one running back in specific. It is a running back by committee type of room, but at certain moments in the game, you do have to identify this guy's having a really good drive, keep it with him, keep this run game going, especially if they are going to have the type of focus on the run game that they had last week, not really getting the receivers involved. Looking at that, though, I think that is something you really want to do. This is a deep receiver room. You have a lot of talent there. So while the backfield is great, it's much improved. You do want to see them use it well. You want to see an improvement on how they've used it from previous years. But how do you get those wide receivers involved at the same time?
So that's what I kind of mentioned a second ago. It's just combining both aspects of the offense. And to your point, if you don't mind me going back to the run game real quick, under the Coach Prime, CU has never had a rusher rush for over 100 yards in a game. I love that he loves having multiple backs that he trusts, but as you were saying, I do think he needs to identify one that can get over that mark of over 100 rushing yards a game. And then moving on, they have so many wide receivers that they're confident in. They've talked a lot about that. But there wasn't one guy. I mean, who was like the one guy last week? You can't really identify one because as a team there were not even 100 receiving yards, and so just find a couple guys they're confident in. Of course, they are missing Miller this week, but yeah.
Yeah, no, the absence of Omarion Miller is pretty vital for this game. He's out with that hamstring. He wasn't in practice all week, and he likely won't be in this game. So you'll see a chance for a lot of those wide receivers in that further down on the roster, deeper in the roster, to be getting opportunities and getting looks. And establishing those guys early on will be vital. You know, you running the ball opens up the pass. Once you get the pass opened up, then we just start rolling.
Yeah, I recall only calling Omarion's name once last week on the broadcast, which was that was quite disappointing. But we do have, to your point, John, I mean, we do have other receivers who can definitely step up. Draylon Miller, we got Hakeem Williams. They saw some action last week, not a whole lot. But what I really hope is that we're going to be able to call their names today, and they're going to get some notoriety because I mean they deserve it. I mean, Caden, I mean he's still that dual threat quarterback, but if he just carries the ball the entire time, I mean, that's not going to work. And I think Delaware's defense, they'll be smart, and they're going to be able to analyze our playing style and our play calling strategies. So they're going to adjust pretty quickly. So you can't just resort to one play the entire game. And Colby, to your point as well, just being diverse with how we use our receivers, how we use our running backs, etc. It's going to be crucial.
Yeah, lots and lots of different weapons at the disposal of our quarterbacks today. And yeah, I say quarterbacks because we are going to get a look at Julian Lewis today. Coach Prime confirmed it earlier in the week. He will be playing today. Getting our first look at him, how much of him do we expect to see in this game?
I think that wholly depends on the scoreboard. Yeah, Coach Prime before the season said that throughout the season we're going to be seeing Juju, but that the game comes first. So at halftime, if we're up by 3 touchdowns, I think we see Juju for most of the second half. If we're up by 2 touchdowns, we see him maybe just the fourth quarter. You know, it really depends on how the game's rolling. And I think they could use Juju to help figure out more who their top wide receivers actually are. You can't have just one wide receiver, your top wide receiver with just 39 yards. Your top wide receivers need to be doing a little bit more. And I think Juju could help with that.
Something Coach said in practice this week when talking to press was, I know when you'll see him, you don't know when you'll see him. So it seems like they do have a plan to have him out. I suspect it will probably be relatively early on, possibly in that second quarter, especially if you establish a pretty big early lead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, establishing the lead to your points, gentlemen. I mean, that's going to be key. And I mean, having Caden start, or Salter rather, having him start at QB for the first quarter at least. But I mean, honestly, I think we'll definitely see some action from Juju in the fourth quarter, especially if we've put up a good gap between the score between the Blue Hens. So, I mean, Caden has proven he's a veteran player. He had some slip-ups last week, but I mean, Juju should get some time as well to prove himself. And he's really looking to prove himself and get a spot on this roster once after this season especially. But hopefully later in the season we'll see more action from him too.
Yeah, and of course, Juju only 17 years old, highly touted recruit, but he's getting to face a very weak opponent here in Delaware. This is not a good defense, and this is going to be the best look he's going to get and the best chance he's going to get to succeed, especially early on in this season with the growing pains of adjusting to a new offense and just the team having natural growing pains as well. What are the expectations from him? We obviously saw him in the spring game. It was up and down. That was against his own team. And he's had time to grow since then. What should we expect from him against a defense like Delaware?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's gonna just really work on his work. I mean, he's proven that he can be really more of a passer, like kind of like Shador was. It's not quite on the same level as Cade. I mean, you said, Liam, he's highly talented, but I mean, this is a weak opponent, like you said. So I think we'll see him get some decent time today. And I mean, this defense, I mean, if our O-line's really going to have to step up as well and just protect him. Because in the spring game we saw they really did not do a great job at that. Our own defense was scary to be generous. They were able to penetrate and sack Lewis multiple times. So, I mean, just got to protect him and just let him get his ground. This is the first big crowd that he's seeing under the lights here at Folsom.
Well, I mean, it's not a Texas Tech, it's not an Arizona State defense, it's not any top defense, but it is still an FBS defense, which is more than he's ever faced, of course, as a freshman. So I know that Coach Prime and the whole staff just wants to get him out there to see how that FBS defense kind of operates, how an actual college defense operates. So probably what they're looking for today from him, what we will be looking for, everybody will be looking for, is how does he dissect a college defense? How does he acknowledge it? How does he notice it? How does he find gaps in the zones? Things like that.
A big focus will be just easing him in. Again, we can't emphasize it enough. He's only 17. He turns 18 in, I believe, 2 weeks. His processing and his dissection, like you said, Colby, of the defense will be crucial. But again, I think it'll be an easing in. I don't think we're going to be seeing the fireworks show early on for him.
Yeah, and this is an important game for him because this is him really getting to show what he can do against an FBS opponent. Show if he is potentially ready to move into that job earlier than next year. And obviously he's looked at as the long-term guy, but the big question has to be asked. Given the circumstances, could he win the starting job today?
Based off of only last week, absolutely. Salter needs to look a little better if CU wants to compete in the Big 12. Salter has to look a little better. So if Salter doesn't make any noticeable improvements after last week, but then Juju comes out and he's just rolling. He's just in a groove. He looks good. He looks confident. I definitely think a lot of fans will be questioning, and even the coaches themselves will be kind of questioning, like, hey, does this change need to happen?
Yeah, I mean, you fellas put this perfectly. I mean, Juju, this is his first experience playing at the FBS level, and I mean, we're playing all FBS opponents this year, so it's going to be a big test for him. Can he handle the pressure? But I mean, based on what we saw last week from Salter, I mean, like to your point, Colby, if he doesn't improve, I mean, he could be a serious contender for the starting job, but it all really comes down to what he does today and what he can prove to Coach Prime with this pressure and this crowd here in this stadium. And so it all comes down to what he can do today, how he's going to respond to the pressure at playing at the collegiate level, fellas.
But to your point also, no matter what it looks like from both QBs today, the change isn't going to come after this week. It's not going to come next week. It's going to come weeks down the line.
Big step towards that future decision.
Yeah, this is going to be a crucial game for both quarterbacks. I agree that if Caden comes out here and struggles against Delaware today, that will certainly raise questions. But overall, I feel like he had a solid performance last week. It's something to build on, and it will be interesting to see how Julian does in this first game. In terms of picking the winner for this game, who do you have winning and by how much?
CU by probably about 20.
Fellas, got to be honest here. I mean, I have a number of friends who go to Delaware, so I mean, I've never been to Newark, but I mean, it's a great town, and I mean, this team, the excitement around it is going to be absolutely exciting. Psych! Give me Colorado 35-21, baby. Let's go!
I think we're going to be seeing a very decisive big victory for Colorado. I'm expecting us to win by up to 4 scores, honestly. It could be a big blowout for Colorado.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take the Colorado Buffaloes 40-3. I want to see this defense step up. I think our defense is going to smother Delaware. I think our offense is finally going to click, and we have so many options to throw at them that we should have no issue moving the ball and scoring and stifling their offense in return. Well, thank you all for joining us here on the pregame. We are inching closer to kickoff. This is a very exciting game for the Buffaloes, hoping to bounce back, but remember, you heard it here first.